Up next in the broadcast, President Park Geun-hye's family reunion proposal may be this year's turning point in North-South relations, as experts say both sides may be exhausted from tensions. Tech heavyweight Samsung Electronics logs its worst quarterly profit in more than a year, but analysts expect conditions to improve on strong semiconductor sales. Korea's Catholic Church says there's a definite possibility of the Pope visiting Korea later this year. Primetime News begins now.
Good evening and welcome to Primetime News. It's Tuesday, January 7th here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I'm Yoo Ji-hye.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thank you so much for joining us. We begin with the latest on President Park Geun-hye's New Year's proposal for family reunions.
No response yet from Pyongyang, but experts say her offer is likely to serve as strong momentum to mending soured inter-Korean ties. Arirang News Han Da-eun reports.
Following in the footsteps of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's friendly New Year's message, President Park Geun-hye also made a conciliatory gesture on Monday, suggesting a resumption of inter-Korean family reunions for those separated since the Korean War. Pyongyang unilaterally and abruptly canceled reunions planned for September, just days before they were to take place. So could President Park's proposal serve as the touchstone for friendlier inter-Korean relations this year? Experts say yes.
I think the proposal will serve as momentum to improve strained inter-Korean ties. President Park did urge North Korea to abandon its nuclear program, but overall, her speech has left the door open for dialogue. North Korea doesn't want further tensions now either, as it's weathering some internal instability.
Seoul's Unification Ministry, however, made clear on Tuesday that the issue of family reunions will not be linked to the halted inter-Korean tourism project near Mount Kumgangsan. The announcement is being interpreted by many as a way to block North Korea from taking advantage of family reunions to restart tourism operations. Seoul maintains the stance that tours to the Mount Kumgang resort will not resume unless Pyongyang claims responsibility for shooting a South Korean tourist dead in 2008. But some experts say the issue of the Mount Kumgangsan project won't get in the way of restarting inter-Korean dialogue.
Even if North Korea attempts to mix the two issues, I think the two sides will be able to find middle ground, as they've now both entered a phase of seeking out dialogue.
Analysts also add Seoul's latest offer will serve as a barometer of North Korea's sincerity in mending ties with the South. Han Da-eun, Arirang News.
And moving now to President Park Geun-hye's economic vision. Her push to ease investment regulations in the service sector to boost domestic demand is showing signs of progress.
But as our Kwon So-hwa reports, challenges remain and the voices of dissent are growing louder.
A bill proposed to ease regulations for industrial complex investments was passed at a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, one day after President Park Geun-hye placed an emphasis on boosting domestic demand by deregulating the service sector.
올해 투자 관련 규제를 백지 상태에서 전면 재검토해서 꼭 필요한 규제가 아니면 모두 풀겠습니다.
As another follow-up measure to President Park's plan, the ruling Saenuri Party said on Tuesday that it will focus on passing laws related to streamlining regulations at a parliamentary extra session scheduled for February. They say about 20 bills were pushed back in 2013. According to the party's think tank, merely passing the pending bills could bump up the nation's economic growth rate by 0.4%. One of the bills the Saenuri Party proposed last year was related to a zoning law that says no hotels can be built within 200 meters of an elementary, middle, or high school. The Ministry of Strategy and Finance expects that lifting the restriction could result in 60 new hotels in the country and about 47,000 new jobs. However, the main opposition Democratic Party stood in opposition to the bill, claiming it would damage the environment for education. Another pending law would allow casinos to be built and operate on Korean cruise lines, a move designed to attract more foreign tourists to the country. The Democratic Party, however, said the change could lead to a growth in gambling addiction. The party also expressed concerns that President Park's aim of easing investment regulations is a move towards privatization, especially in the health sector, something that could lead to a rise in medical costs, a drop in quality, and polarization among economic classes. President Park, meanwhile, will be leading the ministerial meeting for the regulation reforms herself. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
New data from Korea's central bank shows that nationwide household debt grew at a faster clip in 2013.
As Korean households plunge further and further into debt, concerns are rising that a growing financial burden may hurt domestic demand. Paul Lee has the details.
The Bank of Korea released data on Tuesday showing that the country's household debt reached an all-time high last year. Outstanding household lending by local banks and non-bank financial institutions totaled a record $639.5 billion as of the end of November. The increase of $4.7 billion from October marks the largest monthly gain in 5 months since a nearly $6.2 billion on-month advance in June. The central bank says the growth in mortgage loans expanded due in part to an increase in housing transactions during the cited period. The latest tally shows that Korean households are feeling the burden of massive debt. The nation's household credit, which includes bank loans and purchases on credit, hit a fresh high of over $931 billion as of the end of September. At this current pace, that figure is expected to surpass about $940 billion by November. And compared to 2004, the nation's household debt level has more than doubled. Other statistics have shown that Korean households have also lost their spending power. Household debt against disposable income rose to 136% last year, the highest ratio in a decade. The new data comes ahead as BOK policymakers are scheduled to hold a rate-setting session for January on Thursday. Analysts widely expect the central bank to freeze the key interest rate at 2.5% for the 8th consecutive month. Paul Yi, Arirang News.
The Korean public will begin to feel the fruits of the slow economic recovery this year if everything goes according to recent plans announced by the government.
And for that and a look at the economic ups and downs ahead in 2014, we are now joined in the studio by our Park Geun-hye. Now, Ji-hye, walk us through some of the economic goals set by the government for 2014.
So while the Korean economy expects the domestic economy to grow 3.9% in 2014, up from 2.8% estimate for last year, it unveiled its 3-year economic innovation plan that outlines its longer-term economic goals. Under the plan first mentioned by President Park Geun-hye yesterday during her New Year's press conference, the country's growth potential is expected to grow to around 4%, and the annual per capita income is forecast to exceed $30,000 with sights on reaching 40,000. The government also aims to achieve a 70% employment rate. Today, Finance Minister Hyun Woo-seok reiterated the plan and set a clear timeline to carry it out.
We will collect opinions from various institutions like the Korea Development Institute so that we can come up with a roadmap for the 3-year economic innovation plan by the end of February.
Well, Korea has shown time and time again that it can overcome impossible odds, but there are skeptics saying that this is too much to handle in just 3 years.
Right, Sean. First of all, experts say the goals that make up the plan are not easy. The domestic economy has to expand about 4% every year to achieve the annual per capita income over $30,000 by 2017. Adding to that skepticism, Korea's annual per capita income has remained in the $20,000 range for 7 straight years after it first exceeded that number in 2007. But that being said, experts say the 3-year plan is not an impossible goal, but they point to the importance of boosting domestic demand. And to boost domestic demand, experts as well as policymakers mentioned earlier in our newscast emphasize the importance of easing corporate regulations and fostering the nation's service sector, including the health and tourism industries.
It's important to create a virtuous circle among consumption, investment, and employment. The link has been very weak recently.
To boost domestic demand, strengthening the competitive edge of the nation's service sector is critical. Easing corporate regulations so that companies can actively invest in the service sector is also important.
Right, Tia, so what are some critical variables that can affect Korean economy this year?
Economists cite a number of major risks stemming from the global economy, including the U.S. Federal Reserve's decision last month to taper its $85 billion per month bond buying stimulus measures, the slowing Chinese economy, and Abenomics in Japan, which is pushing the Japanese yen lower. Abenomics in particular is a major concern among Korean exporters as it erodes their price competitiveness, especially in the automobile and electronic sectors, and currently 6 out of 10 major export products in the two nations overlap.
The current trend of the weakening Japanese yen will hurt Korea's exporters and could eventually lead to a reduction in Korea's overall growth rate by 0.1 percentage points per year.
So in terms of uncertainties at home, experts point to the snowballing household debt problem that's having a negative impact on consumption and the sluggish real estate market that could cut the nation's growth rate. They say, however, that the recovery we're seeing in advanced nations is still a good sign for the Korean economy.
All right, again, a mixed set of indicators. Thank you so much for that report, Gia.
You're welcome.
Before your day ends and another begins, get the latest news live from Seoul.
Residents whose features
restrictions is on the rise.
Closing ceremony.
Expert analysis from Asia's heartbeat.
The legislature, circumstances.
With a viewpoint only Korea's global network can provide.
The United States, the latest report.
Unrivaled access from a team always on standby.
Came on the news are trying to cover up the South's true intentions.
Some disappointing news for Samsung Electronics. Asia's biggest technology company has turned in a worse-than-expected earnings report for the fourth quarter of last year.
And with its rival Apple poised to extend its reach into the Chinese market later this month, it appears as though Samsung is facing a tough year ahead. Here's Yoo Li-an with more.
The world's largest smartphone maker surprised analysts with its lower-than-expected earnings announcement. Samsung Electronics said Tuesday that its operating profits reached 8.3 trillion won, or roughly $7.8 billion in the October to December period. This falls far short of the most bearish outlook of $8.2 billion and also represents the company's lowest quarterly profit in more than a year.
The profit rate fell sharply in the smartphone sector. As competition grew fierce in China, the company saw high marketing costs. It also had to set aside funds to pay for fines in connection to lawsuits with Apple.
Analysts also point to the bonus payments to employees as another reason. They were given out to mark the 20th anniversary since Samsung chairman Park Geun-hye set out an ambitious roadmap to turn his company into a global technology leader. Looking ahead, analysts say Samsung Electronics will do better this quarter than last on the back of strong semiconductor sales. But it seems that the era of explosive profits fueled by the tech giant's cutting-edge smartphones is over. While the company still faces hefty marketing costs, it now faces pressure to offer smartphones that aren't just better, but cheaper as well. It appears inevitable that profits will decline as its average selling prices continue to slide amid increased competition from low-cost smartphones. Analysts forecast single-digit growth or a slight contraction for the company's mobile division this year. On top of that, Apple's fierce marketing strategies loom as another threat this year. Starting late next week, Apple will enter China's $80 billion market, challenging Samsung's tight grip on the market there. Apple is also expected to start selling smartphones with larger screens near the end of the year, putting it in direct competition with Samsung's Galaxy Note series. Yoo Li-an, Arirang News.
Taking you now to Las Vegas to the kickoff of one of the world's largest technology trade shows. Korea's electronics heavyweights Samsung and LG are expected to lock horns over their latest cutting-edge products at the Consumer Electronics Show. But as our Kim Jong-un reports, the competition may be good when it comes to dazzling the visitors.
Their Consumer Electronics Show 2014 is primed to pit fierce rivals Samsung and LG against each other. Both Korean tech giants are in Las Vegas with hundreds of other firms to unveil their TVs, smartphones, wearable devices, and pretty much anything else a consumer might want to buy. Samsung Electronics, the world's #1 maker of flat-screen TVs, hopes to extend its market lead with its 105-inch ultra-high-definition TV with a curved display that features state-of-the-art resolution. The UHD TV lineups feature so-called finger gesture functions, which allow users to activate the device by moving their hands over the device. LG Electronics will unveil the world's largest 77-inch curved organic light emitting diode, or OLED TV. LG says more than 70% of its smart TV lineup will eventually be equipped with WebOS. The WebOS operating system simplifies ways to control and find content on its smart TVs. Wearable devices are also one of the trends to watch in Las Vegas. Samsung is showing off its latest Galaxy Gear smartwatches, which can be linked to home appliances, allowing users to remotely control their TVs or lights with their smartwatches. LG is also pushing its wearable device, the LifeBand Touch, which offers fitness data to users as well as alerting users to phone calls and texts. Samsung and LG will also unveil a slew of connected home products, through which users will be able to connect to their home appliances via smartphones instead of through a separate smart device. The Consumer Electronics Show 2014 runs through January 10th. Kim Jong-un, Arirang News.
Over in Washington, Korea and the United States agreed to step up efforts to bolster joint combat readiness to deal with possible North Korean threats. In the first full day of his visit to Washington on Monday, South Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se and U.S. Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel underscored their role of the combined defense posture on the Korean peninsula as a strong deterrent against North Korean provocations. The two sides said their alliance serves as a linchpin for peace and stability in the Asia-Pacific region and vowed to strengthen their combined defense posture by acquiring critical military capabilities. Minister Yoon is scheduled to sit down for talks with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry in Washington on Tuesday, local time.
It's confirmed Janet Yellen is to become the first female chairman of the U.S. Federal Reserve in its 100-year history. Connie Lee has more on the next in line to head the Fed and her plans to boost the U.S. economy.
With a vote of 56 to 26, the Senate has approved Democratic nominee Janet Yellen as the next chairman of the Federal Reserve. The Senate's nod on Monday makes Yellen the first female head of the U.S. Central Bank and one of the most powerful women in U.S. history, as she is set to lead a major economy. Yellen will officially take the reins on February 1st, replacing current Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke, whose second four-year term expires at the end of this month. 67-year-old Yellen currently serves as the Fed's vice chair, and as a supporter of the easy money policies the Fed has been pursuing under Bernanke, she's expected to continue the fight to bring unemployment down, even if that means strategies that drive inflation higher. When voting time came, the Republicans who voted against her were those against the Fed's aggressive $85 billion a month bond buying program, even though the Fed decided to taper the monthly purchases down to $75 billion starting January. At her first public appearance as nominee to succeed Bernanke last November, Yellen said she would follow in her predecessor's footsteps on quantitative easing. Previously, Yellen served as president of the San Francisco Federal Reserve Bank and also governor of the Fed Board and chair of President Bill Clinton's Council of Economic Advisors. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
A papal visit could be on the horizon. Vatican insiders suggest Pope Francis is very keen to visit South Korea, quite possibly in August. If he does, he would be the first pontiff to visit the country in 25 years. Shin Se-min reports.
A Korean Catholic Church spokesperson said Tuesday that a visit by Pope Francis to Korea could come sometime in August or October, when two separate major Catholic events will be held in the nation. The 6th Asian Youth Day will be hosted in Daejeon in August, while 2 months later, a ceremony to beatify 124 Korean Catholic martyrs could be held. Pope Francis is currently reviewing the case for beatification for Paul Yoon-ji Chung and his 123 companions who were tortured and killed in 1791 for practicing their faith. The Catholic Church of Korea has been requesting that Pope Francis visit the country since shortly after he was inaugurated last year, and said it has been receiving positive feedbacks from the Vatican. If Pope Francis does make the trip, it will be the first papal visit to Korea since Pope John Paul II came in 1989. Along with Pope's possible visit, there is speculation that a Korean archbishop may be created a cardinal at an appointment ceremony at the Vatican next month. And if appointed, that person would be the third Korean cardinal ever. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
With just about 6 months left, Brazil is lagging behind in preparations for the World Cup.
And Stephen Che joins us in the Sports Center with the details.
Hey guys, there are just 155 days left until the big tournament, and Brazil is scrambling to put all of the pieces together. There are many challenges remaining, but none bigger than the one surrounding stadium construction. FIFA President Sepp Blatter criticized the nation for not being able to meet the end of 2013 deadline to complete construction on 12 stadiums. And at this point, only 6 are complete, with the delay stemming from financial problems and safety issues, among others. In addition, there are real concerns over the strain on the infrastructure and transportation networks. But back to Blatter, he said regardless of all this, the World Cup would be a huge success. And leaving that there, let's get to some Olympics news. Some South Korean speed skater Lee Sang-hwa is sharpening her skates for the Olympic Games. At the national speed skating competition, she recorded a 500-meter time of 38.11 seconds, good for first place. Lee was satisfied with her overall performance, but said she needed to work on launching off the line and turning the first corner. The 500-meter world record holder is looking to repeat with a gold medal at the Olympics next month. Meanwhile, skeleton slider Yoon Sung-bin has earned himself a ticket to the Sochi Winter Games after a surprise finish. At the Skeleton Intercontinental Cup in Whistler, Canada, he won the gold medal with a combined 2-run time of 1 minute 45.73 seconds. With the win, he enters the history books as the first ever South Korean to win the event. Now let's get to Tuesday's top matches, starting in the KBL. The Mobis Phoebus took a road trip to Anyang to face KGC. Now both teams have won their last 2, but one would get their streak broken. Now Mobis and KGC go head-to-head in the first half, but Mobis closes it off, up by 2. Then Rod Benson takes over with 16 second-half points before going down with an injury in the fourth quarter. Now it goes down to the wire, but KGC can't put up a final shot, and Mobis wins 69-66. Now it's the V-League. Russian Cash and Korean Air faced off in Incheon. Let's get to the highlights. It's Russian Cash speeding out of the gate, taking the first set 25-23. But from there, Korean Air soars away with the game, taking the next 3 sets with ease. Michael Sanchez contributes 34 points, including 3 serving aces, and Korean Air gets 3 points with a 3-1 victory. That does it for me here in the Sports Center. This has been Stephen Che. Check back at midnight for the latest in the world of sports.
Although today was a mild winter day here in Korea, we have snow in the forecast.
That's right. For details, let's go over to our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center. Bo-kyung, how much snow are we looking at?
Good evening, guys. Some good news for those of you who've been waiting for snow. Well, those of you in Gyeongsang-Bukdo province will see the most between 3 and 8 centimeters, and the Gangwon-do and Jeollado provinces about 1 to 5 centimeters, including the mountains of Jeju. Elsewhere in the central regions can expect a centimeter. Well, taking a look at the current conditions, the nation will gradually be under the influence of a low pressure trough, which is why we're seeing cloudy skies across the map. Well, after tomorrow's snow showers, the coldest weather of the season so far lies ahead on Thursday and Friday. Morning lows on Thursday will dip to -9 degrees and -12 on Friday. Other than that, Seoul is currently seeing twice the normal levels of fine dust, and it will go away as snow showers begin tomorrow. Moving on to tomorrow's readings, Seoul, Daegu, and Gwangju make it to 4 degrees. Meanwhile, rain is forecast in Busan all day with a high of 6. Moving on to other regions, Jeju and Dokdo reach 10 and 8 degrees respectively. Meanwhile, Mount Kumgang tops out at -5. Well, that's all I have for you this hour, but I'll be back with more updates after midnight.
And that's our broadcast on this Tuesday night. I'm Yoo Ji-hae in Seoul.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.